Okay, so I just finished Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I always have wanted to read it. I like a bit of a classic stories, classic fantasy, science fiction, horror stories, and one of the most famous, of course, is Frankenstein or his monster. And I finally read it. I just finished it, and I am blown away by this story, by this book. If people would ask me, give me your top 10 recommendations for life, whatever people should read once in their lives, this book will probably be my top 20 right now, and or maybe even my top 10. Of course, everyone basically knows what it's about or what the themes are. And I was so blown away by the writing of this book and the way these themes are explored. So it's a 200-year-old book. Mary Shelley was 19 years old when she finished this book. And that makes me kind of cringe for myself on the inside. But it's a 200-year-old book, and it's mostly considered to be the first science fiction story, as it is about someone who is very into natural philosophy and science and wants to create life at some point, and does that in a way. I'm going to talk about a few things that happen in this book. There's going to be spoilers, but it's 200 years, people, come on. I'm going to tell you about what I thought about the writing, what you should expect and should not expect, because pop culture today doesn't do this book justice at all. I'm not saying that every Frankenstein movie or story made in the past century is bad or anything, but it's very different from this book. The way he creates the creature is actually surprisingly shortly described in this book. I don't believe there's any lightning involved. Victor Frankenstein is not really a doctor or a scientist. He's just a student who is obsessed by creating life at some point. He doesn't have a servant called Igor who goes, "Yes, master, create life, I shall." And so there are a lot of things that are changed. When I read this, it didn't feel like a horror story. The only scary thing maybe is the fact that Frankenstein built his creature with body parts of dead humans or dead animals and mixed them together to create a body. That's the only scary part. But the rest of it is just, to me, it felt very more philosophical than it was a horror story. And it's definitely science fiction, of course, but the themes are like parentage. So, for example, like, what if you treat your children so bad that they turn into bad human beings? Who's responsible for that? Are those the human beings that you raised, or is it your fault? What would you do if you met your creator and your creator hates you, or wants you dead or gone? Or what if you do if everyone you meet hates you and wants you gone because you're scary looking or you're ugly looking? Is basically what the reason is that the creature is being hunted down by most people he meets. So what is it about? We're going to give a short recap about the story. The story is told in multiple layers, you might think, and the book actually starts with some guy who's going on an adventure to the North Pole, and he's on a ship. And when he's at the North Pole, he notices someone on a sled passing by on the ice, and then another guy. And the guy is looking for help, and he's lonely, and he's not really good, healthy looking. So he helps him, gets him on the ship, and this guy is Frankenstein, and he tells his story about this. So there's a story inside a story. And Frankenstein is a young man, a student from, I believe, Germany or someone in Central Europe, Switzerland. So, and he's kind of in the elite families, and he has friends, and he goes to study natural philosophy, and goes to college, and is very obsessed at some point with creating life. And during his college years, he's experimenting with that. And then he creates the creature. So he collects all these body parts and stuff from graveyards and whatnot, and he creates the creature. And but as soon as the creature comes to life, it scares him. Like, oh my God, I used actually body parts for this. And the creature opens his eyes, and he's scared by his eyes, but the whole look of the creature. And the creature doesn't do anything, it just wakes up. Frankenstein's like, nope, he's getting out of there, and he leaves the creature alone. Going back to his family and going back to his normal life, and so with his friends and families, and it's all happy, it's all great. Until one younger brother, I believe, is murdered, and he immediately thinks, oh my God, it must be the creature I created. He doesn't tell anyone about his creation. He doesn't tell anyone about his thoughts about, oh, maybe he killed my brother. In fact, someone else, Justine, one of the housekeepers, she's being accused of it, and she's innocent. And everyone thinks she's innocent, but yet she is prosecuted and executed. And Frankenstein is a dick. He knows she's innocent. He knows what he created, and he's actually to blame for the murder. But he doesn't tell anyone, and she's executed, and he's like, whew, dodged that bullet, didn't I? So Frankenstein is a very unlikable character, actually. And at some point he goes hiking in the Alps, and there he meets his creation. At this point, 2 years or so have passed since the birth of his creature. And his creature confronts him, and he says, sit down, I'm going to tell you what happened to me these past few years. And the creature starts telling about the moment he woke up and he was abandoned. I thought it was really interesting to get quite a chunk of the book from the perspective of the creature, who doesn't have a name. He's always been called the creature or fiend or demon or monster, of course. And Frankenstein doesn't give him a name either. He just thinks of his demon or creature or abomination, basically. Creature tells him he's been wandering around for quite some time, trying to get to know the world. He's basically a newborn. A grown, looking like a grown monster. He is a newborn who doesn't know shit, who was abandoned by his parent the moment he woke. And so you really feel for him, actually. And then he tries to discover the world. He notices the birds and the trees and the forests and the beautiful environments. He's kind of like a bit like a scientist who discovers fire for the first time. From oh, it hurts, but it could also be very useful, you know. And he eats berries. He's actually vegetarian, basically. He doesn't hunt people. He doesn't kill people or animals or whatever. But as soon as someone sees him, they want to hunt him down. They want him away, and they want him gone, because they've never seen something as hideous as the creature. That's kind of sad for him. He really wants to be friends with humans. At some point, he basically observes for quite some time a family living in a cottage, and he hides in their shack, and he's kind of observing them and noticing them. And there's an old man who is blind. I believe his grandchildren, a boy and a girl, are living with him and helping him and having their just careless lives, basically. And he's really jealous of them, and he kind of likes them a lot. And while he's sitting there, he also learns a lot. He learns to use language, and he finds a book at some point, and he learns to read, and he learns about history. So he's very new into this world and learning about everything that is in his grasp, basically. At some point he decides, no, I'm gonna go there and I want to be friends with them. And at some point, when the girl and the boy aren't in the cottage, and the blind man is on his own, he enters, and the blind man doesn't know how he looks, and they start a nice conversation. And at some point, the creature tells him, please be my friends. And he knows at some point the boy and the girl are coming back to the cottage, because he hears the door and says, please, you have to help me and let them know I'm a good person. But as soon as they see him, they panic, and they hit him and they chase him away. And eventually they move away from the cottage. Really, yeah, you really feel bad for him. And that's when he decides to go on a revenge kind of plot against Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's family, basically. And then he murders the little brother, and then the creature says, now, here we are. And then the creature tells Frankenstein, I want to have a girlfriend. So create me a woman. I would like one woman, please. Because he says, if you don't do this for me, if you don't create me a woman, I will kill your family. Okay. Frankenstein goes to England with his friend. Frankenstein is going, okay, I'm going to secretly create another being. And he's doing that, he's busy with that. And he knows the creature is chasing him, he's watching him in secret. So he's in Scotland at some point, working in a lab, creating another creature which he loathes. And at some point he's like, what am I doing? Am I gonna create another creature like the one I already created, who kills all these people? So he's not at all feeling guilty about the things he has done to the creature. And you're like, damn, Victor, you're an asshole. I mean, the creature, yeah, he did bad stuff. He does kill people and stuff, but I feel more for the creature than I feel for Frankenstein. And he's messing around with life. He's playing God, which is of course one of the bigger themes in his book. And he's a lousy God. He just creates and then just doing stupid things. And I created you. But the only reason the creature is doing it, not because he is hideous, or not because he is created by Frankenstein, but because Frankenstein abandoned him. And Frankenstein doesn't seem to know all that, doesn't seem to think about that at all. He just thinks he's hideous, he's a monster, and because he's hideous, he's killing people. And as at some point, Frankenstein hates him so much, and he thinks, well, I'm not going to create you a girlfriend. And then the monster is when they talk about that, he's like, okay, well, then don't. Then I'm going to kill some people. And then later on, he kills his best friend. There are actually people who find the body of of Frankenstein's best friend. And they accuse Frankenstein of it. And he gets into jail, but he gets out later on. But that's the first time that Frankenstein thinks, oh wow, maybe I did kill these people by creating a monster. But not by creating a monster by abandoning the monster, but by creating a monster by creating a monster. So he still thinks, I have to do something about this monster. And not say, oh God, I'm sorry I abandoned you, and can we please work on our relationship, because I am a very irresponsible God. And he doesn't do that. He does feel kind of, oh man, and then he goes back to his family because he's betrothed to a girl they adopted, like he knows from very young, and they get married and she gets killed by the monster, and he's like, haha. And now they're going on a cat and mouse kind of game, and where Frankenstein chases him down, and he thinks like, oh, I'm gonna kill the monster once and for all. And the monster's like, okay, bye, and he leaves these kind of clues, so it's kind of a catch me if you can kind of part of the book. And they go all the way through Europe and eventually up to the North Pole. And then we're back at the beginning of the book, where Frankenstein is telling the sailor that found him on the North Pole about all of this. Spoiler alert, 200 years old, spoiler alert. Frankenstein dies at the ship because he's very sick or weak. And when that happens, the monster, the creature, is also at the North Pole somewhere. And when Frankenstein dies, the creature stands beside him, looking at him. And he's actually mournful. Actually a really sad ending, because the monster of Frankenstein decides to, he's actually sad for his creator to die, and that he didn't want this in a way. And he tells the sailor, he leaves the sailor alone, and the sailor sees him. And this is the first time in the book the sailor sees him mourning for his creator. And the sailor is like kind of compassionate about him. And he feels bad for the creature. And the creature leaves, and he decides, it's time for me to die somewhere. I will die in the North Pole alone. And it's just so sad, you know, it's about creation, about creating life. Things go all the way wrong. Frankenstein dies, and yeah, he was a dick. And then the creature dies. And the creature who's never been happy. And Frankenstein, who's always been terrified and, oh, the creature's coming for me, and at some point, what did I do by releasing this monstrosity into the world? So it's a really sad book, basically, but it explores these themes so well. And I'm definitely going to reread this somewhere in the future, of course. But yeah, it kind of got to me, the existential weight of creating life, or taking responsibility for your actions, and judging people on the way they look or the way they at first appear. So yeah, don't expect a horror story or a very fast-paced story about angry people or bloodshed or killing or whatever. Characters are very great explored, I think. Mostly, of course, Victor Frankenstein and the creature. The creature being my favorite character. If you're gonna read this book, I really recommend it, obviously. If you read it, it might feel a little old-fashioned, or the writing style might not resonate with you. I had to get used to it in the first couple of pages, but at some point it clicked with me, and I thought it was rather beautiful. Actually, there were a lot of long sentences and pretty big words as well, or old-fashioned words that you don't see in many literature today. But as soon as it clicks with you, it's pretty nice. Yeah, just wanted to talk about that. And as disclaimer, it's complete coincidence I finished this today on Halloween. I did not plan it this way at all. I started this book a couple of weeks ago, and some days I didn't read it, and some days I did, and I finished it today. And then I thought, well, wait, it's Halloween. I can make this video, of course. So yeah, there you go. Another book recommendation for you. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Read it.